Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams; who looks inside, awakes. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding certain views which others find inadmissible. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. The pendulum of the mind oscillates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong. Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. As a child I felt myself to be alone, and I am still, because I know things and must hint at things which others apparently know nothing of, and for the most part do not want to know. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. There's no coming to consciousness without pain. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. Show me a sane man and I will cure him for you. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own souls. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order. Mistakes are, after all, the foundations of truth, and if a man does not know what a thing is, it is at least an increase in knowledge if he knows what it is not. Thinking is difficult, that's why most people judge. As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light of meaning in the darkness of mere being. Whatever is rejected from the self, appears in the world as an event. We cannot change anything unless we accept it. Where wisdom reigns, there is no conflict between thinking and feeling. How can I be substantial if I do not cast a shadow? I must have a dark side also if I am to be whole. The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents. Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking. The one is the shadow of the other. The shoe that fits one person pinches another, there is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Through pride we are ever deceiving ourselves. But deep down below the surface of the average conscience a still, small voice says to us, something is out of tune. Shame is a soul-eating emotion. There are as many nights as days, and the one is just as long as the other in the year's course. Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness, and the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity. The creative mind plays with the objects it loves. The best political, social, and spiritual work we can do is to withdraw the projection of our shadow onto others. What you resist, persists. To find out what is truly individual in ourselves, profound reflection is needed, and suddenly we realize how uncommonly difficult the discovery of individuality is. The first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego, the second half is going inward and letting go of it. About a third of my cases are suffering from no clinically definable neurosis, but from the senselessness and emptiness of their lives. This can be defined as the general neurosis of our times. Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment and especially on their children than the unlived life of the parent. The reason for evil in the world is that people are not able to tell their stories. Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. An understanding heart is everything in a teacher, and cannot be esteemed highly enough. One looks back with appreciation to the brilliant teachers, but with gratitude to those who touched our human feeling. The curriculum is so much necessary raw material, but warmth is the vital element for the growing plant and for the soul of the child. If there is anything that we wish to change in the child, we should first examine it and see whether it is not something that could better be changed in ourselves. Nights through dreams tell the myths forgotten by the day. It is often tragic to see how blatantly a man bungles his own life and the lives of others, yet remains totally incapable of seeing how much the whole tragedy originates in himself, and how he continually feeds it and keeps it going. Every human life contains a potential. If that potential is not fulfilled, then that life was wasted. Sensation tell us a thing is. Thinking tell us what it is this thing is. Feeling tells us what this thing is to us. We should not pretend to understand the world only by the intellect, we apprehend it just as much by feeling. Therefore, the judgment of the intellect is, at best, only the half of truth, and must, if it be honest, also come to an understanding of its inadequacy. Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness, and the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. I must also have a dark side if I am to be whole. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The latter procedure, however, is disagreeable and therefore not popular. We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. It all depends on how we look at things, and not on how things are in themselves. The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it. Anyone who attempts to do both, to adjust to his group and at the same time pursue his individual goal, becomes neurotic. Who looks outside, dreams, who looks inside, awakes. Deep down, below the surface of the average man's conscience, he hears a voice whispering, there is something not right, no matter how much his rightness is supported by public opinion or moral code. There can be no transforming of darkness into light and of apathy into movement without emotion. I shall not commit the fashionable stupidity of regarding everything I cannot explain as a fraud. Addressed to the Society for Psychical Research in England. Thoroughly unprepared, we take the step into the afternoon of life. Worse still, we take this step with the false presupposition that our truths and our ideals will serve us as hitherto. But we cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning, for what was great in the morning will be little at evening, and what in the morning was true, at evening will have become a lie. Art is a kind of innate drive that seizes a human being and makes him its instrument. To perform this difficult office, it is sometimes necessary for him to sacrifice happiness and everything that makes life worth living for the ordinary human being. If one does not understand a person, one tends to regard him as a fool. The healthy man does not torture others, generally it is the tortured who turn into torturers. If the path before you is clear, you're probably on someone else's. Find out what a person fears most, and that is where he will develop next. Words are animals, alive with a will of their own. When an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. Every mother contains her daughter in herself, and every daughter her mother, and every mother extends backwards into her mother and forwards into her daughter. The bigger the crowd, the more negligible the individual becomes. Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Sometimes you have to do something unforgivable just to be able to go on living. Midlife is the time to let go of an overdominant ego and to contemplate the deeper significance of human existence. Without this playing with fantasy, no creative work has ever yet come to birth. The debt we owe to the play of the imagination is incalculable. What if I should discover that the poorest of the beggars and the most impudent of offenders are all within me, and that I stand in need of the alms of my own kindness, that I, myself, am the enemy who must be loved? What then? A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them. As far as we can discern, the the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. In each of us there is another whom we do not know. My whole being was seeking for something still unknown which might confer meaning upon the banality of life. The true leader is always led. Nobody can fall so low unless he has a great depth. If such a thing can happen to a man, it challenges his best and highest on the other side, that is to say, this depth corresponds to a potential height, and the blackest darkness to a hidden light. With a truly tragic delusion, Carl Jung noted, these theologians fail to see that it is not a matter of proving the existence of the light, but of blind people who do not know that their eyes could see. It is high time we realize that it is pointless to praise the light and preach it if nobody can see it. It is much more needful to teach people the art of seeing. Nobody, as long as he moves among the chaotic currents of life, is without trouble.